Hello. We only have 45 minutes, and it's 40 now, so it's going to be a bit fast. Okay. Yeah, but we'll see what we can do. I do a lot of work in care. I work with families. We work with parent training, mainly around challenging behavior in the more violent kind of behavior. I also do a lot of work with self-harm, and it's not just the little cutting or something like that, but the severe self-harm area. And that's what I've been working with for many years. My background is autism. I work out from a teach background. I do not do much work in autism anymore. I do most of my work in the forensic psychiatry or in the psychiatric system, in closed wards. That's my main work. But I just published a book on dementia care as well, because they throw chairs as well, don't they? Yeah. So actually, we're going to talk about autism. I'm not going to say people with autism or autistic people. I'm going to say people. Is that okay? Yeah. Because to me, it doesn't matter so much if it's dementia or just being angry or autism. It's the same behavior, and we need to manage it the same way. And of course, it might happen a bit more often with some people than with other people, and then we need to be better at it, right? But it's the same we are doing, and I think that's very important. So that's the framework, actually. But we need to start somewhere, and I want to start with talking about not so much challenging behavior, but solving problems, because I think that's what we're doing a lot of the time. I actually think a lot of challenging behavior, or maybe even conflicts, is just about problem solving. Has any of you ever been in a conflict? How many have been in a conflict? When you think back on that, isn't it like this, that you actually just did your best, didn't you? It was the other guy who was an idiot. Often it's just like that. I have a problem and I solve it. My solution might become a problem for somebody else, right? And he needs to fix that. And then that solution might become my problem. We can just start from a little example. I got a DVD in the mail. It's many years ago, when I started out. And it was quite a staff group working with a young person, and they sent me this DVD, and then they sent the letter saying, "You're coming to us to supervise our staff. We would very much like for you to talk about this situation, because it's difficult," they said. And I put the DVD in my machine at home, and it started out quite nice. It was dark, totally dark. Then somebody turns on some light, and there's a woman about 40, and she says, "Good morning." And there's a 70-year-old boy sleeping in a bed. He thinks that her behavior is a problem. It's very easy to see. So he solves it. He takes the blanket and pulls it up over his head. I think it's a perfect solution. Yeah. It's darker, it's quieter, right? She thinks that's a problem. So she solves her problem by taking the blanket and saying, "Good morning." He thinks that's a problem, so he pulls the blanket up again. And she thinks that's a problem, so she takes the blanket and puts it in the sofa. He thinks that's a problem, so he gets out of bed, turns off the light, goes back to bed. She thinks that's a problem, so she turns on the light in the hallway and in the bedroom. And then he gets up, turns off the light, goes to bed again. And then she turns on the light in the bathroom, in the hallway, and in the bedroom. And he gets up, and then he takes her shirt here in the back, like this, and he pushes her out of the apartment, closes the door, locks it, and turns off the lights, and goes to bed. About 40 seconds later, the door opens. Two young guys, about 25. I don't know if you have that in England, in residential homes. Do you have this kind of staff that you hire them because of their size? You know which ones I'm talking about? These ones. Two of those. But they sneak into the apartment like this, and then they just stand there. Then the door opens, and this woman comes in again, and she's singing, "Good morning, good morning, good..." And she turns on every lamp in the whole apartment. And the young guy, he gets out of bed. He takes her, throws her out of the apartment, starts turning off the lights. But when he's doing that, the two young guys, they go into his bedroom behind his back, and they take the bed and they run out. This was sent to me on a DVD. It didn't stop there. It ended in a physical situation. He was headbanging and he was hitting and kicking and everything. And the staff told me when I got to talk to them and said, "You understand we have a problem?" And I said, "Yes, I understand you have a problem." "I understand this young man has a bigger problem. I wonder why he didn't call me instead of you." Because often what we consider a problematic behavior might actually be a good solution. And he might consider our behavior a little problematic as well. And that might be a little difficult to work with. But what actually I said to them is that, was that if we need to fix that, there's only one way, and that way is to make sure that one of the two parties uses solutions that is not a problem for the other part. That's the only way. And then the staff says to me, "Aha! How can we then teach this young guy to get out of bed in a way that's not a problem for us?" That's the most normal question. And it's a question I get all the time. How can we teach him? And I just looked at them and said, why should we teach him anything at all? Why not just start to get him out of bed without it being a problem for him? Because that's actually what we should do, isn't it? So it's not us about teaching him, it's about changing our behavior so it's not longer any problem for him. Because then we do not have this behavior problem. But if we think we should teach people to stop behaving poorly, then we're going to have a lot of work. And I don't like a lot of work. I like sitting in my sofa at home, actually. So I want to make it easy. So what we actually did was that we put up a coffee machine in his bedroom, about 3 yards from his bed, and the staff comes in the morning, turns on just a little lamp by the coffee machine, pours in the water, puts in the coffee beans, pushes the button and says, "Good morning, I'll be back in 10 minutes," and they leave the room. And then, have any of you got a coffee machine at home? You know the sound when it starts? Yeah. And then the smell after a couple of minutes? And then there's another sound after 7 minutes? That sound. It's magic, isn't it? Yeah. And he gets out of bed, he doesn't have a chance. And he takes some coffee, pours it in his cup, and he sits and he drinks it. And the staff comes in 3 minutes later and says, "Oh, are you up already?" We actually made a solution that wasn't a problem for him, but we still reached the goal, and that was what's important. Question for you. How many of you, when your alarm clock went off this morning, how many of you needed 7 minutes more? Great. How many of you gets out of bed a little easier if there's the smell of coffee? This is not magic, isn't it? This is actually quite easy, because we're talking about people. And we were talking about a way of working that didn't allow for him to be a person, I think. But we need to make it work, and we got it to work, and it was easy. But we needed to change the perspective, and I think that's very, very important. The funny thing is that the first staff group, they actually tried to control the situation, and they lost all power. The second staff group did something totally else, but they got a sense of power. But they didn't control the situation. The young person controlled the situation. We need to experiment a little bit today, and this is one of the first little experiment is about self-control. I'd actually like for you to stand. Can you stand? We'll do a small experiment. Can you put one foot in front of the other like this? And then stand like this. Can you do that? Great. Can you put your thumbs on your shoulders? And then you do like this, and then you say, "Ah!" Perfect. Thank you. Sit down, please. Question. Did I control you? Yes. We have to try a new experiment because I'm not so sure. Start by taking off all your clothes. Did I control you? No. I did not control you the first time either. Why did you stand like this? Because you wanted to? No, because you could. Am I right? And I asked you to. And you could because you had self-control. Am I right? Have any of you ever lost self-control? Can you do like this then? Oh. So actually, you needed to have self-control in order to cooperate with me. I think that's maybe the main thing. How did we get this young guy out of bed? by making him in control of the situation and then prompting him in a good way. And it actually worked. And I think that's probably the most important thing I will say this 45 minutes, so I could actually stop now, right? But now we need to figure out how and why, because there are we have a little model for this. It's about self-control. This young person wanted to keep self-control. And of course he does. Because when we do not have self-control, that's when we come across this line. Has any of you ever been across that line, self-control line? You know, when the affect gets too high? What do you do when you're up there? You hit your head on the floor? You scream? Yeah. You hit people, you kick people, you bite people, poop your pants, yeah, stuff like that. That's when we lose control. Nobody wants to lose control, and because of that, we have a lot of strategies in order to keep it. But the best strategy ever is getting older, up to a certain point, and then stopping. Because what happens is this line is very low when we were kids. When my kids were newborn, actually, when they got hungry, they started screaming. They lost control totally. But at the age of 1 year, they can be hungry for about 10 minutes. Am I right? How about your age? 45 hours? Maybe even 45 days, probably, some of you, without crying. So what happens is that this line, it becomes higher and higher. And suddenly you're here, up until the age of 70, then it starts going down again. Am I right? But when that isn't enough, and sometimes it isn't enough, some people have a lower line. We call it affect regulation. Some of us have a worse affect regulation. And that means that when we get into a difficult situation, we cannot just say, oh, it'll work out. No, we'll actually say, this will not work out. In a little while, I will hit my head in the floor. I might even poop my pants. I don't want to do that. I need to have strategies. And then we do some quite amazing things. Example. Just a little while ago, I asked you to stand like this. You did that very nicely, thank you. Then I asked you to take off all your clothes. And then you thought, I might not be able to control that situation. Am I right? I don't think I can figure out what will happen if I take off all my clothes. I might lose control. I don't want to lose control. And then you did something. You acted. And what you actually did, I think it's amazing. What you actually did was that you refused, and then you laughed me right up in the face. You really thought I would take... What do you think about behavior like that? Is that okay? Of course it is. We call it Gandhi behavior. You know Gandhi? Mahatma Gandhi? He said, if you say no, you don't have to fight. Isn't that nicely? We call it non-violence even. And refusing is just one. Lying is another one. Has any of you ever lied in a difficult situation to get out of it? Was it you? No. That's the standard one. Yeah, I saw a small video on the internet just a couple of days ago. A mom saying to her 2-year-old, who was drawing on the mirror? It was Batman, he said. Perfect lie for a 2-year-old. Actually, it's not about him doing something wrong. It's about him being a poor liar, isn't it? Because when I do stuff like that, people never figure it out. Actually, my wife, she's getting gray hair, you know, and I am too. But she's an old punk rocker, and that means that she won't dye her hair because it becomes gray. But she had dyed hair when she didn't need it to, you know. That's a difference. It's a statement to dye your hair when you're punk, except when it's gray. Then it's a statement not to do it. So her problem was actually how to stop dyeing her hair when it became gray. And she did it by dyeing her hair gray. And she was sitting in our kitchen when I came home from work, and she said, what do you think? And I have nothing against gray hair, but I don't like changes. I'm 50-year-old man, we don't like changes. People get a little autistic at the age of 50. I don't know if you have realized that. Yeah. But I just lied. Actually, I did. I said, it looks fantastic. Was that wrong? No? It was a perfect solution, wasn't it? Ethical, 100% ethical, correct solution. And I think that's very important. A lot of people say people with autism don't lie. And some other people say people with autism lie a lot more than other people. And I just say, no, some people who have a little bit autistic traits are quite poor at lying. Because lying, actually, you need to be very good at figuring out what other people think in order to be a good liar. So the problem is not actually the lying. The problem is often the quality. And the quality is because of a disability. And we do not have moral judgment on disability, do we? No. So when people lie and they lie poorly, I normally just say, it's okay that you lie. I even think it's a very good idea, but you need to learn it. You need to train. We have an ethicist working in Sweden. He's called Pia Jasma, and he wrote a PhD thesis where he actually said we need to have courses in lying for children with autism, because some of them don't lie, and it doesn't benefit them to not lie. They say the truth every time. Do you think I'm gaining weight? Yes. And the other ones, they lie, but they do it poorly. And none of that is good enough. We need to train people to be able to be good liars, because without lying, our society would probably not exist for a very long time. Diplomacy is a lot of lies, isn't it? And we need to train people to do that. Then it's running away. Has any of you ever thought, I better go now, in a difficult situation? Yeah. And then somebody says, come here, and the other person thinks, I better go now. And he starts walking away. And some people walk after. I've seen that, staff and parents. And then, boom, they get a hit like this, or some spit in their face, because it's very effective. People actually stop when you hit them or spit at them. They don't chase you anymore. That's quite smart, isn't it? Every time staff or parents say, he hit me, I ask them how. And they don't understand the question. Some says, like a lightning. I said, no, show me. And most of the times it's like this, or like this. One hit. And that's because you're probably too close. 10 hits, it's probably because he's chaotic, too much. But one hit is because he needed you to step away. And it works very nicely. I got hit 3 times by an elderly woman in a group home in Ireland just 4 or 5 months ago. She hit me 3 times in the face because suddenly I was standing in her living room because I needed to see if the staff were watching TV during work time, and I don't like that. And she's actually blind. She's got 3% eyesight on one eye and none of the other one. So she could only see that there was somebody standing in her living room that she didn't know, and she went like this, boom! And then I went out in the hallway, and it worked perfectly, didn't it? Yeah. Because of course I shouldn't be standing on her living room floor. It's not okay, because it was her home. But I was trying to get the staff. My fault. Then we have threats. I think threats is I've been threatened a lot. I'm a neuropsychologist. I worked, before I started working mainly with violence, I would do assessments. Normally not assessments of children. No, I did assessments of families, like family ability assessments. People with special needs. Is it good? What support do they need in order to be good parents and stuff like that? And it was a bit difficult sometimes because you would get sometimes quite amazing people you would meet, like members of Hells Angels with an ADHD diagnosis, and the municipality said, will he become a good father? And some of them, they would just look at me and say, you know what to write, don't you? And that's a perfect threat, isn't it? Yeah. And I would always say, of course I know what to write, but I decide what I write, and it's my job to make you think that it's a good way of writing it. So you can be calm. I will not send anything to anybody before you okayed it. And every time people just become, okay, and we can start working. And it's my job to get people to accept what they are, what their lives are, or what support they need, isn't it, as a psychologist? So I'm not afraid of threats. Every time I've been threatened, maybe 150 times in my work, I just figure out, why is he under pressure? How can I release that in a way so he won't be threatening? Because it's not wrong to be threatening. It's probably the best way he has at the moment, because otherwise he'd have done something else. So I need to figure out why. I need to make him safe. That's what we're doing in this line of work. Then we have some biting one hand, somebody even cutting like this. And some people even biting, you know, right here by the nail. Have any of you ever been stressed and then? It's the same thing. And I've seen a lot of cases where people actually take young people who bite their hand, and their parents take them and pull it away, staff pull it away, and they start hitting their head on the wall instead. And I don't like people hitting their heads on the wall because I'm a neuropsychologist. I don't care about the hand. It's a lot better. Okay? So let people bite their hand and then figure out why they had to do it instead of taking the hand away. Do you understand? It's very important because when we take away the hand, they will start hitting their head, and we will hold their hands and they'll be lying down, tied up in bed, and no, it's not a good quality of life. So we need to figure out why in order to do it instead of taking away the hand. It doesn't matter that you cut yourself a little or bite yourself a little. It's not that dangerous. It's just not, it's not the best strategy in the world, but it's not the worst either. So we need to not be afraid, because what I realize is that parents and staff, they get a lot of anxiety when there's blood. And it's unnecessary. We need to be professional about it, handle it, and figure out why. That's the best way. And then we have the bad names. I like bad names. Yeah, has any of you ever called somebody a bad name? How many did that last 2 weeks? So it's quite normal behavior. Amazing, yeah. Was it because you were equals and then suddenly the other one started deciding over you and you said, idiot? And then he can either say, sorry, I shouldn't decide over you, you're equals. Or he could just say idiot, and then you're equals as well, 2 idiots. Am I right? So we use these bad names in order to gain equality. And that works fine when you are equals. It doesn't work when you're a parent and a child, or when you're staff and the person you're working with, because then it's actually in a power relationship. So when somebody down here is saying idiot here, then this one shouldn't say we're equals, and he shouldn't say idiot back. He should just say, yes, you're allowed to call me any bad name you want because we have a freedom of speech, but now we're eating. Because that lets actually work. And I don't know if you know it, but freedom of speech is a democratic right. Am I right? And it's used against the people in power. And when I'm the person of power, I need to be able to handle it. It's quite easy. So what we do when that happens, we say, that you might think, and now we're eating. That's the easiest way. Because we don't want to create a lot of solution, and get into a conflict. We want to be able to manage and get things right instead. But why do we use these? In order to, isn't that wonderful? Stay below the line. That's what we want to do. So what we need to do as parents and staff is to figure out how to help this out. And I think we need to do 3 things. The first thing, to make sure the person keeps his or her self-control. Second, help the person regain self-control if the person actually lost it. And then third, we need sometimes to help people leave the control to us. And that what we mean by that, if I want him to brush his teeth, I want him to leave the control to me and say, yes, I will brush my teeth. Sometimes I like that. I like people who make good decisions for themselves. I don't like people making bad decisions for themselves. Then I think they should make my decisions for themselves instead. Do you understand? And that's what all of you are doing as staff and as parents. Am I right? So sometimes we need to figure out how to do that as well, but we want the person to be in control while he's doing it. So we're going to look, for the time we have left now, it's not that much, we're going to look at tools for that. And I think we need 3 toolboxes actually. The first toolbox is what we're going to look at, because it's managing. We need to manage behavior without escalating the situation. And then sometimes we need tools for evaluating what went wrong. And then sometimes we need tools for changing so it doesn't happen again. My problem as a psychologist is that every time I get a question, it's about change. And everything I was taught at university was about change. How do we change this person? And that's not what I'm doing, because I realized one thing many years ago. Before we can change anything, we need to manage it. And if we manage it, we might not need to change it. Because why is a behavior challenging? Because we cannot manage it. Am I right? So I actually believe that people have the right to have the behaviors they want to have if we can manage it, and it keeps everybody happy. I don't need to train people, especially not adults, to do anything that's not in their own motivation. I need to make things work around the person, and that's what I'm doing. So we need to talk a lot about managing, and maybe if there's time, just a bit about the two others. But the management is actually what's most important. So, but in order to do that, the management, we need to understand just one theoretical concept, and that's the concept of affect contagion. What it means is that, have you ever talked to somebody who was depressed? Did you get a little funny feeling? Have you ever been sitting opposite from somebody yarning? That's contagious as well, isn't it? And it's contagious in using something we call mirror neuron or mirror neuron systems. What's actually happening is that we mirror muscle tension. There's a lot of research on autism that's so wrong about this because it was bad research, but there's some research, not on autism, but on everybody, that's so right about this mirror neural system. And why do we yarn when you look at people yarning? And that's what we're going to play a little with. We have a little example. This is a picture of a girl. It's an old picture. It's 150 years old. It's a bad picture too, isn't it? But her feeling, do you get this little, she's quite nice, isn't she? She's got a friend. Did something happen when I changed the picture in your stomach? Yeah? You got a different sense, a different feeling, didn't you? And try to figure out what happens. Feel it in your stomach. Isn't that amazing? This is something everybody in the whole world can do. People with autism can do it, people without autism can do it, everybody can do it. And we can do it from the day that we're born, actually. Then some people have a little problem in the development after that, because this is the basis of empathy development. And then some people do not have a standard empathy development. And we have different diagnoses for those kind of people. And some people even lose it later on in dementia and stuff like that. But what happens is that these people, they do not develop the ability to separate their own affect from other people's affect. We have some research on that from Cambridge. Simon Baron-Cohen's group looked at this in a neurophysiological research project. Do you understand? Do you remember 10 years ago when we were always looking at brains at conferences? Pictures of brains? Yeah. Everybody says now that we can't use pictures that are copyrighted, so I had to make my own. This is a brain, you look at it from the inside, that's why you can see the red stuff, it's the limbic system, right? So it's the right hemisphere looked at from the inside. And what Lombardo and his friends did was that they actually made a lot of students look at a picture of Queen Elizabeth. And when they were doing this, they were using a piece of the brain that's right here in the middle. It's called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. We call it the Queen Elizabeth area, okay? And when they were talking about themselves and thinking about themselves, they were using an area up here called singular gyrus, but we can call it the me area. Actually, it's the other person area and the me area that we're using when we're thinking. But when they did the same study with young people with Asperger's syndrome, students of Cambridge, so high functioning, that's a bad word. It's an awful word. But you know what I mean, don't you? When they were doing that, actually these people were using the Queen Elizabeth area when they were thinking about themselves as well. And that means it's a bit difficult to figure out, am I me or am I you? So I need to think about it to make it work. That's difficult for me to understand. I admit that. But I've seen it on my grandchildren. When they're below the 2 years of age, they can't do it either. I can't say me and you to a 1.5-year-old. I have to say grandpa, don't I? Because otherwise they won't understand. And people with dementia, the same thing. I can't say me and you, I need to use names. And we have the same problem. A lot of people we normally call autistic have this problem. A lot of young people, when they get really stressed, have the same problem. Have you ever seen two people fighting, and when you ask them what happened, they don't know who started? Yeah. Because they mix things up. And when that happens, if you have a feeling, the other person will probably have exactly the same feeling. And that might not be a problem if you're happy together, but it might be a problem if you're screaming at him, because he might scream back. And it might be a problem if you're very happy and his line is lower than your line. Am I right? Have you ever played with a 2-year-old and it became too much for him? Yeah. That's what happens. And it happens with a lot of different people and a lot of different ages in my work. That's what I work with. So we need to handle that. And we manage that by thinking about one concept. How do we manage other people's affect? We will look at managing methods for before it happens and when it's full chaos and what we do afterwards, because it's different tools at different places. And the aim is to keep calm. I need to keep calm and I need the person to keep calm, because that's what we're doing. Then there's no problems when everybody are calm. One of the tools we're using is actually a tool we're not using. It sounds silly. But some of the tools we're using are things you should do, and some of the tools are things you shouldn't do. And one of the shouldn'ts is the prolonged eye contact. Small experiment. Direct eye contact, 2 people at a time. Take the person next to you, look them straight in the eye for 10 seconds. You look, I count. Here you go. 2 and 2. Look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Thank you. That was a bit difficult, wasn't it? This was a situation where you were not stressed at all. And nobody was angry at anybody, and still it was a bit difficult. You needed to manage. And a lot of you started managing it by smiling, am I right? And when that didn't work, you started talking about it too. This is so you needed to do a lot of things in order to manage this. But what would have happened is if one person was very angry at the other person and say, look me in the eye, and the other one didn't know who was angry, you'd probably get a conflict situation, am I right? We don't do that. 3 seconds at the most, and actually never in a crisis situation, because you might boost the situation. We don't want to do that. Then it's about speaking as well. Today, I have a problem. There's no windows in here. And most of you, you're not used to sitting indoor all day, are you? Just sitting down in a good chair? How many of you sometimes fall asleep in front of the telly? Yeah. I have a job today. I need to do something inside your head. Am I right? It's called learning. And I need to facilitate that. But researchers in the 60s figured out that you learn very little when you're sleeping. So part of my job is to keep you awake. I do that by using mirror neuron systems. I use muscles around my throat. I could have just not used those muscles. I could have just talked normally. My normal voice is like this. If I had talked like this all this 45 minutes at the end of the afternoon, it would be quite difficult, wouldn't it? So when I want people to relax, I talk like this. And when I want people to wake up, I talk like this. And then I talk to staff and they said, yeah, but I was very calm and he still hit me. And I said, well, what did you say? You know, like this. Put on your shoes. I could talk like this all afternoon, and it would be a bit of a difficult situation, am I right? Because just by using these muscles, some aggression comes into the room, am I right? So when we need people to calm down, we open our mouth. It's about mirror neuron systems. And then, of course, we need to divert. We need to get people out of the feeling. I don't care. Chewing gum in the pocket for difficult situations is perfect, because we need to get people to think about something else. There's a lot of other ways of doing it, of course. Just talking about things you like, talking about things he likes. But in difficult situations, you need sometimes to figure a way out. And diversion is actually an evidence-based method. There was a wonderful study done in '67 where 2 researchers were looking at what happens when you say stop to somebody. Do they stop? And you know, when you do a controlled study, you need to say stop every other time, and every other time you need to do something we call a placebo. And they were doing like this. And it worked better than the stop. Isn't that amazing? And since then we have more than 100 studies looking at distractions and diversions. It's okay. But a lot of people say, but he's not learning anything if I divert him. No, he's not. You're managing. And that's what we're doing. We need to manage. It's very, very important. And then keeping the distance is important. There are many ways of doing it. One of them is when you say, come here to somebody, and they think, I better walk away. And they walk away. You shouldn't go after them. But if you back up instead, they'd probably stay instead of keep walking. When you place a demand, you can do like this, that's what we normally do. Put on your shoes. But, question, if you're lying in your bed and somebody's waking you up, do you think it would be a very good way to do it by saying, good morning, good morning. I'll be standing here until you get out of bed. No, you want him to back off, don't you? And we back off when we place a demand as well. There it is. And then we need to look at how do we stand. Sometimes we stand opposite other people. It doesn't work so good. If you want to talk, you stand like this because it works better, not like this. But the problem is, we stand like this when we start talking. I saw a lot of people talking at lunchtime. Everybody was standing like this because that's what we do when we're talking. But then when we want to make a point, we do like this. And people stop listening. Am I right? Because you change the communication from the cognitive to the affective communication. We don't want to do that. So no, we stand like this. We sit like this. We talk in the car with the teenagers, don't we? Because it's the best. Then it's a good thing to sit down if a person is agitated. I've been standing, you've been sitting. It works best. If you were standing and I was sitting, it wouldn't be a good lecture. Am I right? Yeah. But if I was sitting, and you were sitting, would that be okay? Yeah, but it'd be a bit boring, wouldn't it? You'd be a bit, even though I talk like this, it's still a more calm lecture. And in the long run, it probably wouldn't work. But sometimes I see staff actually sitting like this, calming everybody down. And then to see, oh, Peter's getting stressed. I better stand up to relax him. That's stupid, isn't it? And it's the same thing about the marked body language. I work a lot in forensic psychiatry at the moment, and what we teach staff on the first day is standing like this. Why? Because nobody hits somebody standing like this. It's the safest way to stand. If you stand like this, nobody will hit you. But every time they become afraid, they do like this. And somebody hit them. This is stupid. And I think you know that. Have any of you ever been in the pub on a Saturday night? Maybe even a nightclub? Been walking home later at night, and there's some people coming towards you that are just a little bit too tall, too wide, just one tattoo too many? What do you do in a situation like that? Do you do like this? Huh? No. So what do we do when Peter gets stressed? We do pretend walking home from the pub. You put one hand in your pocket at least, and you put your side against the person, am I right? Turn your side, and you walk away. Why? Do not maintain eye contact. That will probably not work, am I right? Yeah. So that's actually what we're doing in order for Peter to be calm and me to be calm as well. This was the first little part. Then we need to get to this part too. I know the time is almost up. I started 5 minutes late. I need those 5 minutes because otherwise it wouldn't work. Am I right? Yes. Yeah. We'll do that. But I start by scaring you. Because when we come to this part, things become very difficult. When I started working, what people were doing here was actually restraining people. They would boom down on the floor and sit on people. And it looked sometimes quite violent, actually. I never ever saw a restraint that looked controlled. Pictures, everything looks controlled in pictures, am I right? But normally it's just full chaos when I see it. And people still say, we do this because it's safe, because we need to calm the situation down. And I don't understand anything. Even when they restrain children, people think that they're doing the best. And I think it's just plain stupid. I'm sorry, because it's very, very dangerous. We have more than 150 documented restraint-related deaths among children in the last 25 years. 850 among adults. 80% of those had autism. 80%. Why? There was a policeman, he said, but we do not decide how much force we need to use. It's the person who does it. I said, how? We continue till he gives in. And autism is one of those things where we're very, very bad at giving in, isn't it? Am I right? So we continue and we continue. And some of it is quite scary, actually. We have a study here. It's from 2006. This is scary. This descriptive study examines 45 child and adolescent fatalities related to restraint in residential placements in the United States from 1993 to 2003. 45 children and adolescents. And then what's even more scary, when we come down here, results. Male children and adolescents were overrepresented. 38 occurred during or after a physical restraint. 7 in the mechanic restraints, those belting and stuff like that. 28 of the deaths occurred in a prone restraint. That's the most dangerous, but that means that 10 was not in a prone restraint. Some of them were even sitting. We had a Swedish death just last year. This morning in the radio in Sweden, when I was in my car on the way to the airport, when they said the restraint was sitting and he died because of asphyxia, because they make him bend forward, and that's why he died in an airplane, because he was scared in the airplane. So it's very, very dangerous. 25, it was asphyxia. That means that in 20, it wasn't. It was there's a lot of ways you can die. We should not use that. And then in the worst thing, in the 23 cases in this study where information is available, none of the child behaviors or conditions that prompted the restraint would meet the standard of danger to self or others. None. We still do it. I think that's very scary. So we need to do something else, actually. We start out with a simple situation. How many of you saw somebody throw a chair? Does it meet the standard of danger to self or others? No. We have 0 staff or parent deaths in throwing of chair situations. 0. That means it's not dangerous. Am I right? It might hurt, but a restraint is dangerous. People die from it. So, of course, we don't use that. What we do use in that situation is actually, you wait, because it takes maybe 2 minutes, maybe 7 minutes on a bad day, and he doesn't throw any more furniture. Everybody stops again. Isn't that amazing? It might cost a little bit more in the beginning in furniture, but after 2 months it becomes less. We have a study made by Martin Goldwyn in Dublin, who could actually say that we get a 0 cost of furniture throwing after 9 months, because people stop throwing furniture if we let them, but they continue if we stop them every time. And that's quite amazing, because when we let them, we train them in controlling themselves. If you want to be good to control yourself, you actually need training, so you need to be able to wait as staff or parents. And then, of course, we get the other persons out. There's no reason that somebody else gets hurt. Am I right? And if one of you started throwing furniture in here, it would be easier to take out everybody else. Am I right? Than the person doing it. So it's quite easy. So that's what we're doing. It's the safest way. And we actually train this with staff and people. We say, it's like when we have a fire drill, we have the throwing of furniture drill. Everybody knows what to do. Everybody goes out and it works perfectly. And nobody gets hurt. And people stop throwing furniture. And actually, if we hold somebody, it'll take 45 minutes in average before the situation is calm. If he continues, it'll take a maximum of 7 minutes in the research I've seen. So it's a lot faster too, and cheaper in the long run. So it's good. And then sometimes we need to figure out what to do with our muscles. Small experiment, 2 and 2. One person does like this, the other one does like this. Can you do that? 2, 2. Then we do like this, the one doing like this, tense up. What did the other one do? You did like this? Am I right? You tensed up as well? Why? Because of mirror neuron systems. Am I right? You just couldn't not do it. You just, yeah. What does that mean? Have you ever had a quarrel with somebody who is totally calm? No. We fight people who are tense, am I right? So we need people to stop being tense. And then that means we actually need to relax. Every method that works in how to get out of a hold is about relaxing. Jiu-jitsu and all these kind of methods, they all work with the relaxation. So we need to relax because you can't hold a relaxed muscle. Small experiment. Left arm, relaxed. Right arm, tense. Can you do that? And then you just hold tense. And it's actually quite difficult, isn't it? You get lactic acid in your fingers. But what happens if you do like this? It's easy. And then you relax again. And in 3 seconds you'll have lactic acid in your fingers again. You actually can't hold without thinking about it. So if you relax, people would normally just stop holding you. And then sometimes, of course, you might need to grab somebody. And when you need to do that, we need to have methods for that as well, of course. And there's some principles in this, and we should just play with those as well. 2-2. The first one does like this. The second does hold the other's wrist. Can you do that? Then the one holding out his arm starts hitting like this in the air, and the other one tries to stop. Can you do that? And you realize, oh, it's difficult. Let's do something different then. Start out the same way. The first one starts hitting, the other one just follows. And then the other one tries to control it by doing like this. Can you do that? And what happens? Actually, when you move with the person, you can control it, right? When you move against the person, you can't control it. So that's what we're doing. We're moving with the person. We use the person's own movement. And we do it for that means if somebody is hitting somebody and you want to control it, you need to grab on his arm, and that's quite difficult, but his shoulders are the same place. You put it on his shoulder, and you just make sure that he's not hitting anybody. And you do it for 5 seconds. And then when he does like this, in order to hit again, you just move him a little bit, and then you let go of him. And this letting go is quite exciting. Small experiment. First one starts hitting. The other one holds against, trying to get up the adrenaline, and then just starts to do like this. And then let go. And the ones that will let go, you sit like this. Am I right? Because you got surprised. And that's very diverting, distracting as well, isn't it? So we do that, and then we avoid pain, because when somebody is hurt, they're not relaxing. They're getting worse. And of course, we need to get down on the other side. And we do that by calming again. When I started working, every time people were on the way down, we would say, "Why did you do that?" And he'd go up again. Yeah. We don't do that. We tidy up. Staff or parent tidies. Some people ask me, shouldn't he tidy up himself? And I said, why should he do that? We didn't provide the right environment, so he threw a chair. That means we clean it up, because we didn't provide the right environment. That's very important. He didn't do anything wrong. He probably did his best. We just didn't do it good enough, and we were responsible. So of course we tidy up, because it's easier, because it's faster, and because when he opens his eye and becomes calm, everything is normal again, and that's better. And sometimes we even make a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, maybe even hot chocolate, and then we drink it together in order to calm down the situation. And then I realized one thing many years ago. When you give people a cup of hot chocolate, they decide how long time we sit there. Am I right? Depending on how fast they're drinking. So that means we get the person back in control. Some of my colleagues get scared when I say this. They say, then you are rewarding the bad behavior. I don't care, because it's my fault the behavior came, because I'm responsible. I used to work in a car garage before I became a psychologist. We never ever talked about the responsibility of the car, okay? So when I work, I talk about my responsibility, because it's the most efficient. And that's why I always say, of course we make this hot chocolate, because it keeps me in a good way to make this work, and that's what we're supposed to do. And then we're back. And what do we do afterwards? Of course we evaluate in order to plan change. That's what we're doing. This is it. There's just one thing more I want to say. This might look like, some people get scared when I say these, and they say, this looks like you're not doing any work, you're just backing off. No, we are actually taking responsibility for the situation, but the responsibility is in the change later on. But we need to make this work, and we need to make it not dangerous. That's very important. And then everything is worked within this framework that a colleague of mine called Petra Björne from Sweden actually made so nice. She says, what we're doing is that we never force anybody and we never abandon them either. So this is not about not doing anything. This is about doing the right thing, because we do not abandon people, but we never force people either, because there's no reason. Because we want to make this work, and in order to make it work, this is what's needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.